All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a fundamental skill for math success that, and this is the wild part, has almost nothing to do with numbers. So let's just jump right in with a question. What if I told you that one of the most important skills for math actually had nothing to do with numbers? Like, at all. What if it was something more visual, more intuitive? Well, it turns out that decades of research point to this really powerful link between math skills and what are called spatial skills. Our ability to visualize and manipulate shapes in our heads. Think of it like playing Tetris in your mind or doing mental origami. And look, this isn't just for geometry, not by a long shot. This connection is incredibly broad. We're talking about the whole shebang, from basic numeracy and arithmetic, all the way to tackling those tough algebra word problems, getting through calculus, and even just making sense of complex data visualizations. It's like this hidden thread that runs through pretty much all of math. Okay, so if this link is so powerful, you've got to ask, right? Why isn't spatial training in like every single classroom? Well, that's where things get complicated. It turns out the research field itself has a bit of a problem. To put it bluntly, the field is kind of a mess. The research we're looking at literally calls it a confusing terrain for researchers to navigate. And why? Because it feels like everyone is using different definitions, different tests, different frameworks. There's just no consensus. And you can really boil all that confusion down to two main problems. First, nobody can seem to agree on one single definition of what spatial ability even is. And second, flowing from that, researchers are using this huge, messy variety of different tests. It makes it almost impossible to compare results from one study to the next. So, to try and bring some order to this chaos, to map this maze, researchers have generally fallen into three different camps for how to think about it all. And what's so great is that you can simplify this whole complicated academic debate into three main views. Think of them as the splitters, the groupers, and the lumpers. The splitters, well, they see spatial ability as a whole constellation of many, many distinct little skills. The groupers try to bundle those into a few broad, theoretically linked categories. And the lumpers, they argue, nope, it's all just one single overarching ability. Okay, let's start with the splitters. Their whole approach is to try and identify these really specific, distinct subskills. Two of the big ones you hear about are mental rotation, that's picturing an object turning around in your head, and spatial orientation, which is a little different. That's about imagining how your own viewpoint changes. So, for example, a spatial orientation task. It might show you a scene like this and ask, okay, what would these objects look like if you were standing over on the other side of the room? See, you're mentally moving yourself, not the objects. Now, a mental rotation task is different. Here, you're the one who stays put. You have to mentally spin one of these objects in your mind to see if it's the exact same as the other one, or maybe it's just a mirror image. It sounds similar, but it's a really subtle, crucial distinction that the splitters are obsessed with. All right, next up, the groupers. They kind of zoom out a bit. They're looking for bigger categories. For instance, they might draw a line between reasoning about small-scale objects, like imagining how a box folds up, versus navigating large-scale environments, like finding your way across town without a map. And then you've got the lumpers. Their argument is simple. Sure, there are all these different tasks, but they're all being powered by one single, common underlying spatial ability. And they've got some pretty interesting evidence for this too, like studies showing that there seems to be a common genetic network involved in all of these different skills. So you've got the splitters, the groupers, the lumpers, all arguing, all using different tests. It's no wonder the field is so confusing, right? So the big question is, how on earth can anyone actually make progress with all this? And this is where the paper we're looking at today comes in. It does something really smart. Instead of trying to pick a winner between the splitters, groupers, and lumpers, it offers a practical guide, a roadmap really, to help researchers find their way through this maze. And that roadmap is basically a four-step framework for making clearer choices. Step 1, clarify your goal. What are you actually trying to measure? Is spatial ability the main thing or just a side factor? Step 2, based on that goal, pick a model. Are you being a lumper or a splitter for this particular study? Step 3, choose how you're going to analyze the data. And then, and only then, as step 4, you select the right test that actually matches all those previous choices. So you see, this whole framework isn't about saying one side is right and the others are wrong. It's about giving researchers a tool, a kind of compass. It forces them to make deliberate, thought-out choices instead of just wandering around lost in that maze. It's a way to bring some much-needed order to the chaos.
Okay, this is all great for scientists in a lab, but why does this roadmap matter to you? To students, teachers, parents?
Well, it matters a lot. Because better research leads directly to better educational tools. Simple as that. If researchers can start using a structured approach like this, we can finally get to a place where we're creating and testing effective spatial training that we know helps students. But we're not there yet. The work is definitely not over. In fact, the paper itself points out 6 big, let's call them lingering questions that still need answers. And these are the real frontiers for the future. We're talking about big questions like, how do we even test these skills with new tech? Which exact spatial skills help with which exact math skills? We really need more tests designed just for kids, right? And, are the tests we have really measuring spatial ability, or is it just logic? How do we measure real-world navigation? And the big one, can we please finally agree on one unified system for all this? But here's the bottom line. Even without all the answers, we have progress. By turning that confusing terrain into a navigable map, we can finally start moving forward. We can start designing better ways to teach, learn, and think, spatially.
And that really leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. For centuries, we've been obsessed with mapping the world around us. But what if the next great frontier isn't out there, but in here? Could a better map of our own spatial minds be the very thing that unlocks the future of education?